All right. Hi, how are you all doing? So we got a question from Jordan. So here's some tips or a tip. So the question comes from one Jordan. How do you get how do you import a Krita file into Open Toonz? Now there's something to be noted about even the question itself. Generally speaking, do you have software that have their own extensions? So for example, MyPaint has ORA as its extension, which can be opened by MyPaint. Krita uses KRA files, which can be opened by Krita. And although it is possible that some software, for example, Krita can open PSD files, that is a Photoshop document file, there's not very many that I know, or I've not come across any software that can open a Krita file except Krita, right? So that's something to note. So when you're working with different software, it's always good to know what wow, what do I say? What is the best export format? And that really depends on your project. So for example, I'm just gonna create a really quick background. Um, right, so we'll have a background here. Right, that's a really quick thing here. So call that our background. And let's say there's going to be in this background some additional elements, like for example, we might have a rock, right? Cool. Let's say we have a rock here. How crazy. Some really good music playing next door. Anyway, alright, so let's say we have a background here. I'm just gonna do just two colors, not even much. So let's work on the colors. So I have a background here. That's my line art. Let's call that line art. Eventually, I'm gonna make this into one thing. So what I'll do, because I wanna speed up my workflow, I'm just gonna do this real quick, just quickly surround it like so. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna clean it up afterwards. But once I have that, it's just a matter of me selecting the magic wand tool and isolating that rest of the image there. Right, so magic wand tool, let's just make sure that property is on new, not the other one. So that's gonna select everything outside. I'm gonna delete that. Cool. Now if I want to put in some shadows, I'm gonna put in some really crude shadows. Right, so I'm gonna go back to the brush I was using before, which is a special brush you can download. This one's called GD Quest Pixel Art Brush. Initially when I got Krita, I had downloaded this particular brush. So I kind of want darker colors. So for example, that and stuff here. And probably even put in a shadow. Let's say the shadow is going in there, right? And maybe there's a little bit of a thing here as well. And also the same for here. But so let's say we have that as our background. And then I'm going to put in a foreground. Well, not even a foreground. I'm just going to put in an animation. So we have line art, and I'm going to call these three my BG. Of course, it's on a transparent background. Right now, just because it's denoted by the white doesn't mean it's not transparent. It's just a matter of going to image, choosing image background color and transparency. That's found in Krita, and alpha channel 255 means it's fully opaque. Well, we set that to 0, especially when we're exporting, and we'll get that transparent background. So I'm going to leave it as a transparent background like this for now. If you want to, you could always add a gradient, but it's not really dealing so much about this, but more about the other bit. So on a different layer, new layer, I'm going to create another shape. I'm just going to create a very simple shape. We're not going to be doing much with it. Alright, so because I'm animating in Krita, of course when you create a new background, it's pertinent that you add a new blank keyframe. That's going to tell Krita that, hey, this is an animation layer. So I'm going to create I'm just going to create just a shape that's going to be jumping from here to here. Right, so I'm just going to do a thing. Right. First that keyframe, I'm going to turn on my this. Probably even better, let's do this. Scale this up. Jesus, hold my hand. Alright, so we're on that layer. Oops. This is really rough. Hey. Right. Let's have a trajectory, so I'm just gonna quickly create that so I don't go overboard. So that's going to be my trajectory for that. That's on layer 4, back to layer 3. I'm gonna launch myself off real quick. Cause I never let go. That's all the people are doing. Just so I can see more clearly. So a couple frames back. Well, let's just get this done properly. Gonna keep the volume here as it goes down. Right, so right. I mean, about two-ish. Alright, so let's go play this back. Reset our view. Do I get to reset my view? No? Right, there we are. So if I play this back and hide this and this, but I can just delete this. Or hide whichever one. So anyway, press play, play it out, generating cache. Right, so we have that, and that's about 70 frames. I don't know how much. Right, so this isn't colored. I don't care to color it, to be honest, but for the sake of just getting the whole idea out of the way, do something with a similar color scheme, perhaps red, and I'm going to use the bucket tool and just fill those in. And of course, if you're going to be coloring layers separately, don't forget to create a frame there for your thing. So that. Whoa, ho, ho. Why does it do that? Let's check. I don't think I have a big enough gap. So I have things like feathering radius, grow selection. What I'll do is just color that in with the fitting. Right. Close gaps give you better results, to be honest. Use the brush tool to close out that gap and fill it back. Shortcut is F. Alright, cool. Right, so that's what we have. About that much frames. So two things. Go back to my layers. First part, one. Get your background out of the way. So for example, I have this and this, and these two are going to become one thing. Now I call this animation. Alright, so we have background, which I can just save basically as a PNG. So I'm going to change that to something else. Open Toonz. Now I'll call this J underscore BG. That's one. And the next thing, because I'm doing an animation with Krita, right? One of the things you can do is just file, render animation. Now, when the option comes up, typically what we're used to after installing Ffmpeg is to export as a video. That's primarily what most people want to do. In animation, typically, when you're working on projects, you want to export as an image sequence. So in the event that something goes wrong with one thing, one frame or so, you can correct that one frame rather than re-rendering the entire video. And it gives you more control as well. It might take up more space, but it gives you a whole lot more control. And when you're working on a production, you definitely want to not be going back and forth too often. So I'm gonna drop this in my folder here, multimedia, right? And I have put them in my projects. Animation 2021. And what we're gonna do is create a folder. I'm gonna create a folder, so J underscore image sequence. Right, so I choose image sequence. That's where you want to export your stuff to, and it goes from how you want to do your frames, right? First frame 0, last frame 70, which means it's going to create 70. Start numbering at 0, and base name J underscore. Right, so press OK. So it's going to render that out for me, and if I jump to the folder, right? See if I can find projects. 2021 Open Toonz. So I have my one background right? That's J. But what happened is I forgot to save it as a PNG. You want to make sure it's a PNG file. Why PNG? Because PNG images support transparency, which means I can throw in my own something afterwards. So JPG. So we have that now. So we have our file here as a PNG. This can be used in Photoshop, any other image editing software, because that's a common file format. And then the image sequence now is just our layer, which has a transparent background because it's in the PNG. And remember, initially I had changed the background into a transparent background. If you didn't, you're gonna have white backgrounds behind this. And then the last set of frames are empty, so they kind of render out as black. All right, so let's get into Open Toonz and see how we can get things to work out the way we want them to. So let's open up Open Toonz. Right. Also, you can look at this thing here on pixelsprite.tumblr.com. Shows you how to import an image sequence. So in this particular little thing here, we have go to XSheet screen, and then we're going to choose to navigate to the part that asks you to load, right? And then from you choose load, you go to where image sequences and stuff. So we have a sandbox, which is a default project. I have several other projects here. Let's say I have Toons 2 as a project, and we're going to create a scene because Jordan is the one who asked the question. I'm going to say Jordan test, right? That's our scene. Or Krita to OT, Open Toonz. All right, so we're creating that scene, right? So create scene 24 frames per second, and I'm good with this. Yeah, the same file size. The size format is 1920 by 1080. It asks you for what the camera size is, so that's also important to note. If you're going to be using a camera, it's good to know what your camera size is so that it has the right specifications. Right now we just leave it as blank and just create scene. Alright, so if we zoom out, we see the table and we see the camera size, and if we go inside this little thing here, there's nothing inside our table. What we want to get inside here though, we want to get the background in, right? One of the easiest ways to import an image into Krita is simply just to drag it in there. So for example, we have our jbg.png. You just fling it inside here. It's going to ask you, what do you want to do? Do you want to load it, or do you want to open it or import it? So it doesn't belong to the current project, so I'd recommend import it. Importing it pulls it into your current project, which means if you move the project, the file is still going to be inside there. If you load it, however, it's going to be loaded from its original location, and if you move the project folder, there's no guarantee that it's going to follow you. In fact, it won't. So we're going to choose import now, and right now we have that for first column. Just call it BG. And the next thing we want to do is we want to create another column, right? We want to put something else in there. So this is our, let's go to our XSheet view, which they recommended. And they said you could actually go to XSheet here, and there should be an option to say load stuff, right? I'm not seeing that at all. Let's see, there's here, new vector level, raster level, right? I'm going to right click here, insert before new effects. I don't seem to have the option to, here we go, load level, right? So I want to load level, right? That's where that is. And remember where we had originally gotten our documents, we, just go to our documents, my multimedia folder, my projects folder, animation 2021, Open Toonz, J sequence. Right, so I have something called JPNG, right? So image sequence. If I play this out, what you're gonna see, it's gonna show you that. The reason why it shows you this, it tells you j_.png. Remember the file names are named j_ name of the somewhere, and it tells you exactly how many unique frames there are. So right now, if I import this, it's gonna treat it like an image sequence, right? So let me kind of slowly explain that. The file names, as we can see here, is J_000. So it's looking at the numbers and counting how many unique numbers there are in a sequence, which is 0 to 70, which is going to give us 71 frames, which is why we have that here. There is a button that you can use to scrub the timeline to see what exactly is going on through the animation, but you can press the play button to see how it plays out as well. Right, plays out and shows you what the animation looks like. So I'm going to click on that and choose load. Do you want to load it into the current project? Yes, I do want to import it. Right, so we'll give ourselves a little bit of time, and it's going to load every single frame that we have. Now there's a problem here. If you notice, our BG has only one column or one layer. So what we're going to do, one drawing in that particular column. I'm going to go back to my timeline view, and what we can do is from here, changing the view, is click on that and pull this out to match the amount of frames we have here. So essentially this is how easy it is. You can actually pull different frames from a particular software. Typical animation software will allow you to be able to export image sequences, because in a production environment you might have different workflows, but one or two things that you need are, you need to be able to, one, create your animation, and two, export the layers of that animation. Right, so if we were to play this back, what we're going to get is something very similar to what we saw in our Krita file, which is basically what we've imported. Because I haven't shifted the layers any way around, if I press play, what we see is this. Right, so we get a little animation there. Now, I could go as far as saying I want my camera to be animated, and it's something that you want to do for your project. In the event that you haven't done that already, I'd definitely work on procrastination right there. But for the camera, we have here camera 1, right, and this is the current camera we have. Now let's say I want this camera to follow the ball, right? We can actually change the camera position. Now, what I definitely recommend is make sure your camera fits within the table that you have. So I have camera position. I also have camera scale. But I'm just going to play with camera position because I know I have the ability to play with the Z-axis by holding CTRL. It's almost like I'm zooming in. And if I want to go to camera view, I can just choose that, and I get to see what that looks like. Now I'm going to set a keyframe for my camera. Right, so right here we see camera, but you're not gonna see exactly like a thing for your camera per se. One of the shortcuts for inserting a keyframe is Z. So I press Z for my camera. Right, I wish I had an indicator. I'm pretty sure there's one here somewhere, but I just can't find it. Right, so that's one keyframe there. I'm gonna take it off that. Right, so we'll get to see the entire scene. So camera is set there, and let's say I want this camera to follow this ball. So we get, every time you drop a keyframe, when you drop a keyframe, it's going to follow that. So you see camera here, and you see a keyframe there, which is what we want. And I want this thing to follow this ball. So I'm going to pull this here, which is going to create another keyframe for me. Right, so in the event that you think that might be going a little too fast and you want to, stay right there for a bit, what we can do is perhaps come over here. I'm going to see if I can just set that key. That's one key. I'm wondering if I can press Ctrl C and jump to perhaps Ctrl V here. No, I can't set a keyframe there. I'm going to set a keyframe and move this back to the position it was in before. So we have somewhat of a very slight movement. Right, so we're following that ball movement. Right, it does slow down a bit. So I'm saying go over here, follow it. and I know it's gonna splash down here, so I want to have my camera again moving towards that. And it splashes and ends there. So when we play this out, it looks like this from our entire view. Press play. Right, but then if you use camera view and you play it out, and I'm gonna kind of see if I can get the whole table involved here. And if I press play again, what I get is this. And it looks much nicer. Right, so that's how you would get stuff done. And lastly but not least, once you finish everything and you wanna do your entire movement, what you can do is actually go to File and just render. Right, if you go to, for example, well, this is I don't know which version of Open Toonz 1.4. So we have an animation layer, we have timeline layer. But I go to File, and you can choose to fast render to MP4, or if you want rendering options, or choose output settings, right, how you want it to be done. You can actually choose what you want to render in what size. And let's say leave it at the standard size you had from before. While you're outputting the camera, which is good. And how you want to render it out. It says name Krita to OT, which folder it's going to be saved in, which is the outputs folder that's inside your project file. And also you can either choose to export as a MP4, MOV, PNG, or whatever else you want to do. Right, WBM. This is a really useful file format. So for example, if you want to make animated stickers, you can actually use this file format and put it into your WhatsApp folder and you're good. Right, so that's something to note. So I'm going to stick to the MP4 option. Render tile, I don't really care. Other settings, not necessary. And just choose render. It's going to render this. Right, it's important to note that if you don't already have Ffmpeg installed, you will need Ffmpeg to get your files to be able to do the rendering. And just a small note on that, you just go to FFmpeg, just type Ffmpeg in Google. It'll bring up the website. You download one according to your let's just jump to a browser. So for example, Ffmpeg and ffmpeg.org. If you're using a Mac computer, if you're using a Windows computer, just download the right one for you. Just hit the download button. You can download source code if you're planning to edit, but if you have a Windows machine like most of us do, or a Mac machine, you can actually click on the links here and they will take you to the websites where you can download the zip folders that you can use to use Ffmpeg. If you're using Open Toonz, you would go to File, and it'll tell you that you need to go to Preferences, and in the general settings, not just there, but import export, it asks you where your Ffmpeg path is. You navigate to wherever you had extracted your folder, and make sure you go to the bin folder so you can find all the files it needs. Once you close the software, again, the changes will take effect when you open Toonz. Calls it Toonz, not Open Toonz. It's funny. Alright, so let's just jump to the project folder, see what we have. And mine is saved in my C drive. So we have Ffmpeg. I'm sorry, the Open Toonz folder is here. We go to our project. We had called this one Tools 2, and the scene was called something. But output 2, we have this. Play. There's probably like one last thing I'd cover, right? And that is going to be if you wanted to add sound to your animation, splash, right? Or splash SFX, splash sound effect, right? You can always download it from a it's not really a water splash, but in the event and eventualities, let's just pull in an audio. So this is your stuff. You probably want to import things like audio, maybe, right? Let's see. File. 1 second. Ooh. I guess one of the easier ways is just to drag the audio clip inside your thing. So music I bought from Amazon. Travis Green, yeah, Travis Green is pretty good. I just load up something from perhaps royalty-free music from Kevin MacLeod. Bouncy, why not? And we have Industrial Spirit, which is what we are being right now. Let's fling that in here somewhere and see if it'll open it. Do you want to open this? Let's just load it this time around. Right, and it has a sound layer for you there automatically. And if we play this out, well, it's going to be as long as this audio clip. So yeah, you just do that and you do what needs to be done. Right, so that is my tutorial on how to do the background from Krita to Open Toonz. Hopefully you learned something and hopefully you grow in animation and you build up your skills and your tool set. All right, God bless you and take care.